So Kevin Stefanski is getting absolutely shellacked for a bad draft class. As GM of the Browns, Andrew Berry receiving flying colors around the league for the draft that he pulled off, bringing in a bunch of talented players. It is the tail opposite for Kevin Stefanski and what he's done with the Atlanta Falcons.
Kevin Stefanski is getting crushed right now, and the timing could not look worse, because while Andrew Berry and the Cleveland Browns are getting praise around the league for stacking another loaded draft class around Shedeur Sanders, Stefanski's Atlanta Falcons draft is being treated like one of the weakest in the league, and that contrast is loud. One side looks like a front office finally building with direction, finally adding real ball players, finally giving its young quarterback a support system. The other side looks like a new regime already catching heat from Mel Kiper, NFL Network, and multiple outlets for a draft that left people asking what exactly the plan was. And here's the part nobody is talking about. This whole situation makes the Browns look like they may have finally separated themselves from the old way of thinking, because for years fans argued about who was really behind the decisions in Cleveland. Was it Andrew Berry? Was it Kevin Stefanski? Was the philosophy too cute? Was the roster being built the wrong way? But now Stefanski is in Atlanta, Berry is still in Cleveland, and suddenly the Browns draft looks completely different. Bigger, faster, more physical, more explosive, more obvious. These are names fans actually knew. These are playmakers people watched on TV. These are players who fit real needs.
So that lets you know how bad the NFL Network felt like Kevin Stefanski's Atlanta Falcons draft was, okay? Here it says, another way to put that, NFL Network thinks the Atlanta Falcons had the worst draft class in 2026.
Meanwhile, Atlanta's draft is being picked apart. NFL.com gave the Falcons a B-, and the key thing is no other team even got below a B from that grader. So basically, NFL Network looked around the entire league and said, yeah, Atlanta had the worst draft class of 2026. That is brutal. And Mel Kiper was not exactly throwing flowers either. He gave them a C++. And even though some people are saying the Falcons are being punished twice because they traded last year's first rounder for James Pierce, the criticism is still there. No first round pick, only a handful of selections, and a day 3 haul that did not impress people. This is where it gets dangerous, because when you are a coach like Stefanski and your new team's draft immediately gets criticized, people are going to connect dots. Fair or not, they're going to say, maybe this is what Cleveland fans were complaining about. Maybe this is the kind of approach Browns fans were tired of. Maybe when he had influence, things looked different. And now that Berry is operating with a new vibe in Cleveland, the Browns suddenly look like a team drafting for power, speed, support, and identity. Look at what Cleveland did. Spencer Fano in round 1, Casey Concepcion, Denzel Boston, Emmanuel McNeil-Warren. More offensive line depth, more weapons, more competition. The Browns did not sit around trying to outsmart everybody with some confusing board. They attacked obvious needs. Offensive line, wide receiver, defensive playmaking ability. They built around the quarterback room. And whether people want to admit it or not, that looks like a team that is serious about giving Shedeur Sanders every chance to succeed. Here's the part nobody is talking about. Andrew Berry did not draft like a man worried about fan narratives. He drafted like a man who knew the roster needed infrastructure. Fano protects the quarterback. Concepcion brings quickness, motion, screen game ability, intermediate juice, and slot versatility. Boston gives you a young physical receiver with strong hands who can push Cedric Tillman and the rest of the room. McNeil-Warren gives the defense another ball hawk. And then they kept adding offensive line bodies because they know the Browns cannot keep living with a broken pocket and a thin receiver room. That is why Browns fans are celebrating, not because every pick is guaranteed to hit. The draft is always an inexact science. Nobody knows until the players get on the field, but the process makes sense. The philosophy makes sense. The needs make sense. The players make sense. And after last year's draft also brought in real talent like Mason Graham, Carson Schwessinger, Quinshawn Judkins, Harold Fannin, and Shedeur Sanders, you can see a pattern forming. Cleveland is stacking young talent. They are not just patching holes, they are building a young core. This is where young teams usually make a mistake. They boil everything down to the quarterback and forget the quarterback is not playing by himself. People love saying, don't invest in weapons if you don't know who the quarterback is. That sounds smart until you remember football is not an individual sport. The linemen in front of the quarterback and the pass catches around him heavily influence whether that quarterback ever becomes good. You cannot judge Shedeur fairly if the line is bad and the receivers cannot separate. So Berry went out and did the opposite of the lazy talking point. He built the environment first, and that is why this draft draft feels so tied to Shedeur Sanders. The Browns might not say it directly, but the moves say it for them. You don't take Fano, Concepcion, Boston, and more offensive line depth if you're not trying to make life easier for your quarterback. You don't load up on pass catches and protection if you're not trying to see what your young quarterback can become inside a real system. This is not just drafting good players, this is drafting a support system. Meanwhile, Atlanta's draft is being described as incomplete. They had some day 2 praise, sure. Quarterback Avin Terrell and returner Zachariah Vance got positive mentions, but the rest of the class left people cold. Kendall Daniels, Harold Perkins Jr., Antario Thompson, Ethan Aniwanwa, those names may turn into something, but the immediate reaction was not strong. Kuiper basically said Harold Perkins has talent, but Stefanski needs to figure out his real position. That's not exactly a clean compliment. That sounds like a project, and when you have limited picks, you can't afford too many figure-it-out-later players. Here's the part nobody is talking about. The Falcons may have got caught in the middle of paying for the past and failing to inspire confidence in the present. They lost the first rounder because of the James Pierce move from the previous regime, and some graders are holding that against them. Fine, but even if you remove that, the class still didn't feel like it had a strong identity, and when a new regime comes in, identity is everything. Fans want to see what kind of team you are building. They want to see clear direction. Cleveland showed direction. Atlanta left people debating.
AB did it again. Where are the laser eyes at? The laser eyes for AB is around. Come on now.
That is why the comparison hurts Stefanski so much, because in Cleveland, G. Bush and Browns fans are basically slow clapping Andrew Berry. They are saying AB did it again. They are saying the draft class looks like real football. They are saying these are actual ball players with size, speed, athleticism, production, and clear roles. And then you look at Atlanta, and the national draft grades are lukewarm at best and harsh at worst. That contrast is impossible to ignore. This is where it gets dangerous for Stefanski's image, because if Cleveland's offense starts looking better with Shedeur and this new draft class, while Atlanta looks stuck or confused, the conversation is going to get ugly fast. People will say Berry was the one who knew how to build. They will say Stefanski was holding the Browns back. They will say the second Cleveland changed the offensive philosophy and draft style, the picks started looking more obvious and more explosive. Is that completely fair? Maybe not, but sports narratives do not wait for complete fairness. They move fast when the evidence looks this loud. And let's be honest, Browns fans are already feeling the difference. The Casey Concepcion pick looks even better when you pair it with Denzel Boston. One gives you quickness and gadget ability, the other gives you size and hands. That is how you build a receiver room with variety. You put pressure on Isaiah Bond. You put pressure on Cedric Tillman. You tell everyone nobody's job is safe. You want targets? Earn them. You want to be on this team? Make plays. Then they add offensive linemen like Austin Barber who can play inside and outside, and another center-type piece to push the depth. That is how you create competition. That is how you stop depending on one fragile plan. That is how you prepare for injuries before they destroy your season. Brown's draft was not just about the stars at the top. It was about creating a room full of players who can push each other. Here's the part nobody is talking about. This draft also exposes how bad some of the pre-draft arguments were. People said you should not draft wide receivers if you do not have the quarterback solved. People said you should not invest in offense until the quarterback is locked. But that's backwards. The Browns are trying to build a situation where the quarterback can be evaluated properly. If Shedeur becomes the guy, great. If another quarterback takes over later, that quarterback also benefits. Either way, the roster is better. That is not wasting picks. That is team building.
The picks that they made, the way they interacted with their players, they got a whole new swag. There should be no discrepancies on who actually was making these picks before, because it's a brand new type of philosophy.
And that is why Shedeur Sanders is quietly one of the biggest winners of the Browns draft. He gets protection. He gets more pass catchers. He gets a front office that is finally saying, we understand the quarterback cannot do this alone. He gets a coach who can work with a better offensive toolkit. And he gets a roster that has fewer excuses. That is pressure, yes, but it is also opportunity. This is where young quarterbacks usually make a mistake. They try to prove they can carry everything by themselves, but the smart ones use the help. They let the line work. They trust the receivers. They take the easy throw to Concepcion in space. They hit Boston when he wins outside. They lean on the run game. They do not turn every snap into a rescue mission. If Shedeur understands that, this Browns draft could accelerate his development in a real way. Now, does this mean Cleveland is suddenly perfect? No. The AFC North is still brutal. Baltimore is not going anywhere. Cincinnati always has firepower. Pittsburgh keeps building tough lines and defense. The Browns still need the quarterback to hit. Until that happens, everything is uphill. But at least now, you can see a real attempt to close the gap. You can see the Browns stacking talent in a way that gives them a chance. And that is why the Stefanski angle matters, because Atlanta's draft being criticized while Cleveland's is celebrated gives Browns fans a new argument. Maybe the issue was not Andrew Berry alone. Maybe the old Cleveland formula had too many voices pulling in the wrong direction. Maybe now, with a clearer offensive vision, Berry is drafting the kind of players fans wanted all along. Again, we'll only know once they play, but the early optics are not kind to Stefanski. Here's the part nobody is talking about. Draft grades are not final truth, but they do reveal perception. And perception around the Browns right now is excitement. Perception around the Falcons is skepticism. That matters for a new regime. Atlanta fans are already wondering if this staff maximized the board. Cleveland fans are looking at their class and seeing immediate contributors. Spencer Fano could start right away. One or both of Concepcion and Boston could play early. McNeil Warren could push for a role. That is what a good draft feels like before the pads come on. And if even 3 of those top picks become rookie starters, Andrew Berry deserves credit, because that means he didn't just collect talent. He found players who fit immediate needs. That is how good teams draft. They find long-term upside without ignoring the present. They create competition without creating confusion. And right now, Cleveland's class looks like it can do both. So, now the debate is simple. Did Kevin Stefanski just get exposed by Atlanta's criticized draft, while Andrew Berry proved he was the real builder in Cleveland? Or are we overreacting to early grades before anyone has played a snap? Because if the Falcons class outperforms expectations, this conversation may fade. But if Cleveland's draft class pops early and Shedeur Sanders looks better because of it, Browns fans are going to look back and say the truth was obvious the moment the picks came in. Kevin Stefanski is getting crushed, Andrew Berry is getting praised, Shedeur Sanders is getting help, and the Browns fan base finally has a draft class that feels like it was built with common sense, violence, speed, and real football IQ. Now the only thing left is for those players to prove it on the field, because if they do, this will not just be remembered as a good Browns draft, it will be remembered as the draft that made everyone question who was really holding Cleveland back.